Before we get started on the panel discussion, we'd like to thank the panel sponsor, Rextrema. Since 2018, Rextrema has been providing peer-reviewed risk management solutions to financial services. Strengthened by their acquisition of Larkspur Data Resource in 2017, they are now a leading provider of quantitative portfolio risk solutions and tools for meeting the fiduciary requirements of Reg BI. Rextrema Reg BI Optimizer tool leverages robust data, battle-tested technology, and peer-reviewed analytics to help institutions and advisors make compliant recommendations to their clients. Reg BI Optimizer provides the tools necessary for efficiently documenting product selections. Now I'd like to introduce today's next session, which is an executive panel discussion entitled Building a Platform that Attracts Advisors. Joining us today are three senior broker-dealer executives who will make up our panel, and our very own Alan G., co-founder of Finlocity, who will moderate the discussion. Our first panelist is Mitchell Wood, who is the president of Larson Network Services, a shared services company that facilitates back office operations for the Larson Financial Holdings broker-dealer and registered investment advisories. Larson Financial Holding has a unique niche, having made a name by specializing service in for doctors nationwide. Mitchell's experience comes from working in the wealth management space as a portfolio manager and a consultant to over 1,000 and other investment advisors across the country. He has a history of helping advisors systematize their operations to minimize the tedious work. He's also known for his weekly market commentary videos that are designed to make the complex understandable and what was boring exciting. Our next panelist is Geoff Moore, who is the Vice President of Information Technology for Valmark Financial Group in Akron, Ohio. He and his team of experts are responsible for supporting the Valmark infrastructure as well as new product development related to the firm's MyCase platform. Before his current role, Geoff was a business analyst for Valmark. Before Valmark, he worked as a software developer for Cohen & Company, a regional accounting firm, and Oak Associates Limited, an investment management firm. He's a graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Denison University with a degree in psychology, economics, and a certificate in organizational studies. And our third panelist is Alex Georgiev, who serves as the Chief Information Security Officer and Director of Operations at LifeMark Securities Corp. His primary focus is development and implementation of workflows designed to support registered representatives and investment advisory representatives. In June of 2013, Alex became one of the first advisors at LifeMark to achieve the Global Financial Stewardship designation. The GFS is the first and only professional designation that integrates fiduciary best practices with leadership and stewardship behaviors in providing financial services. Alex holds a BA in finance from the State University of New York at Oswego, as well as a FINRA Series 7, 63, 65, 24 licenses. And with all of that, Alan, I'll give you the mic. Please take it from here.
Thank you, Ryan. And thank you, panelists. Appreciate you gentlemen taking time away from your busy responsibilities and your roles at your firms respectively. Would also like to thank our audience for hanging in there. We know today's a long day. So we're going to dive right in. I think this is a topic that resonates with anybody in the back office of a broker-dealer, not just someone who's responsible for managing the technology stack. I think it touches all areas of the firm, as many of you would agree, or all of you would agree: compliance, finance, marketing, sales operations, investment operations, business processing, et cetera, et cetera. And we've certainly seen a lot of change over the last decade. I've seen many of the changes over the last 20 years that I've been in Fintech, and we'll touch upon that a little bit. The thing that keeps jumping out at me, though, is as someone who reads a lot, I keep seeing many articles talking about how the competition for advisors in the next 24 to 36 months is going to be some of the fiercest competition that we've seen in our industry in the last decade. And I think a lot of that is not only the compression that we're seeing take place among some of the larger and smaller firms, some of the breakaways with the RIA movement that continues, but I think also advisors are really looking to top grade their practices. Many advisors have spoken out of the very fact that they kind of felt left high and dry by their firms during the pandemic, and that the gaps in the technology coverage that they needed to function at full capacity and efficiency during the pandemic were borne out. So with that said, I'll kind of sum up my comments by saying, you know, in the year 2000, or in the year, or the 2000s, I should say, the biggest question we heard from advisors was, should I use technology? That eventually gave way somewhere in the mid 2000s to, which technology should I use, from some of the early adopters that were paying attention. Then we hit the 2010s and we saw, you know, more and more folks looking to adopt technology and embed it into their practice. And that gave way to, how do I use this technology? Then the regulators started to pay attention to how many advisors were using technology with their clients. And that gave way to the next question, which was, can I use this technology? Is it compliance approved? And now we see ourselves having come full circle, where now, instead of trying to implore advisors to utilize technology, which I don't think that we'll ever see a day where we don't have to encourage reps to use it more and more frequently, the big question we're getting now is, what technology does your firm offer? Not only for consumers, but advisors that are looking at change or looking at staying at a firm, conversely, are asking tough questions on, what are you doing to support me relative to technology? So with that said, I'm going to remind our audience to go ahead and type in some questions for our panelists in the control panel, and I'll do my best to work through those questions and spread the wealth around amongst these three gentlemen who have agreed to share the wealth of their wisdom with us. The first question here I prepared to get us going, and that is, and I'm gonna ask Geoff Moore, if you would, to step up and take this one for me, Jeffrey. We hear a lot about COVID and its impact on our business. Is there anything in particular that you saw COVID accelerating when it came to technology?
So two come to mind. The first is e-signature. I'm hoping we'll get to talk about that a little bit more in depth a little bit later. And then the other one is really just communication technologies, just broadly speaking. So I know at Valmark, we implemented a cloud-based phone system in 2018, but you know, people were still using handsets on their desk. And I don't feel like we were really like leveraging the tools that we had available to us. And once COVID hit, I think that all changed. Now people, you know, even people that have come back to the office, they're not using a handset, right? They're using either their computer or they're using their works number on their cell phone. You know, kind of coupled with that is the whole idea of like virtual meetings. And in a couple areas, we've seen that play out in terms of applications is with prospects. So we're pretty picky. We kind of have a long dating time at Valmark with new advisors, and we used to require new advisors to come on site before they joined, but that wasn't an option in a COVID environment. So now we've incorporated some of the virtual meetings, and it's allowed us to actually talk to more advisors about potentially coming to Valmark. Kind of the other interesting area, maybe not as specific to advisors, but we've done a lot with project planning and meetings with recording. You know, and that just makes it easier to build the tools that advisor needs. So two big areas, so communications and e-signature.
Super, thank you, thank you. Mitchell, a little bit of a follow-on for this. I'm going to have you field this question in from our audience. How has COVID changed the operational needs of your firm in working with your advisors today?
Yeah, I think the way that Geoff just highlighted it in terms of just the infrastructure, the backbone of the technology as it supports communication. You know, it takes me back to the day 15, 20 years ago when I first started out in this industry. And we utilized our first document imaging system, our very first document repository. And we had to get the broker dealer that we were with at the time on board with that idea because they were so accustomed to paper. Now, fast forward to last year, imagine if your operation still relied on paper like it did circa 2000, how much more difficult that experience would have been. And so overall, I don't think we saw anything that was truly revolutionary, but it just highlighted the need of the progression. And I think it fast forwarded the clock about 5 years, 10 years in terms of the requirements of the operations when it comes to the technology presence. Likewise, you think about the infrastructure when it comes to service and your LAN network. Back in the day, you used to be part of an Active Directory that was on site. I don't want to get too technical on this, but there was all this command and control that was done all from an on-site perspective. Fast forward to today, and now we're in an experience where everything has to be done remotely because folks like myself, I'm working on my home office today. We need to be able to support the operations of the advisors out in the field, and your experience needs to be just as competent in the field as it is in the office.
Thank you, Mitch. Thank you. Alex, gonna again pivot to you on this same topic here. Did you see much in the way of an adverse impact at LifeMark relative to your operations, interacting with the reps as a result of the pandemic?
Sure, Alan. To piggyback on what Geoff and Michael were saying, it did not. We believe we had the infrastructure in place to handle a pandemic of, just business continuity in general. What this did do is help our advisors adopt the technology that was already available to them. So I'm sure we all deal with similar issues where we have a pretty robust tech stack, but we probably have 50 to 75% optimal usage from our advisors. So from a pandemic standpoint, it worked to our advantage where now we have almost full adoption, whether it be optical storage, our virtual email system, encryption software, and electronic signature. So we've had actual improvement in usage of our systems as is.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing. Okay, here, let me, this one's a little bit of a multi-part question here. Mitch, I'm going to ask you to field this. How do you support advisors as more and more of them transition their businesses to, and in quotes here, I'll do the air quotes, lifestyle practices?
Yeah, as we've seen the industry age, I think it's sort of an open secret out here that most of the advisors that are out there are getting a few more gray hairs than not, if they still have the hairs. And and so when it comes to the experience that we at the broker-dealer level, we have to be mindful of a lot of these advisors are trying to go from a growth mindset to a lifestyle mindset. They're trying to be able to service the clients that they want to and have less and less position within the office. And so we as a broker dealer need to bridge the gaps in terms of the requirements, in terms of making sure that you're staying in contact with clients and keeping accurate notes and records of this, and really knowing your clients, but still having solutions for the advisors that want to be in the office less and less, more and more on the golf course, if not the beaches. But then also positioning for that next generation, the 30 and 40 somethings that are moving up to take their place, and providing solutions both in terms of training as well as solutions for succession.
That brings back a memory. Many of you know me, know that I worked in the CRM space once upon a time, and one of the biggest questions I would get from advisors is, why can't I just use Outlook? Why do I need to use a dedicated CRM? And I remember my rebuttal or my response was, do it for the future of your practice, because the person who's going to acquire your practice when you retire in the next 10 years is going to be somebody who grew up with video games and is going to be using technology on a regular basis. And they would rather buy a technology-oriented practice that's already wired for sound, as opposed to having to repaper or rebuild or shift that entire practice over to a technological footing, meaning it actually increases the book value of your practice.
Absolutely. Well, and along those lines, the SEC made a fair bit of waves a couple of years ago in regards to the attention to succession planning. And, we all have this idea that we're going to live forever, or at least we're going to live to the date that we think. And as we saw with last year with COVID, regardless of your opinions on it, people of all demographics were impacted by it. And, people aged out of the system a little bit earlier than they may have anticipated because of this unexpected impact of COVID. And so you need to have that framework in place to be able to support whether you get hit by the lottery bus, as we say around our office, or some other unplanned impact, whether it be a pandemic or otherwise.
Very good. And by the way, I'm not bald, I'm just more aerodynamic here as I age.
That's right.
So with that said, I've got a question here for Alex. Alex, when you look at your tech stack of your offerings from we don't want to get into name dropping here, but from a categorical standpoint, what are the key technology solutions that Valmark makes available to advisors that are either a part of the firm or looking to join the firm?
Sure. I would like to respect the name dropping, right? So other than that, as an independent broker dealer in RIA, we have to maintain a balance of respecting the autonomy of our reps, at the same time providing the technology to support their business. So with that said, we believe that financial planning is the cornerstone of all financial advisor and client relationships. So we utilize a goal-based planning software to help us build a guide or a blueprint for that conversation. All of our recommendations and allocations are based on that blueprint. Then we utilize a data aggregation and CRM combination tool to help manage that relationship with our clients. Again, we also offer encryption software that includes electronic signatures to help with workflows. And most importantly, from a supervisory standpoint, we have all the compliance tools to add to the stack or overlay over our technology. We try not to have any proprietary platforms. We try to outsource everything that we can and utilize cloud-based services when possible.
Super. Thank you, Alex. Geoff, we've got one here for you. It seems like each year there's more and more new technology showing up on the landscape. T3, Michael Kitchis, we just see the list of fintech vendors growing at an exponential rate. Again, I go back 10, 15 years ago, maybe there were one or two new techs that hit the scene and, kicked up a little dust. Now it's almost weekly. There's a new player. There's firms being acquired that we haven't even heard about yet, and they're already being acquired. So the pace and the rate of acquisition as well as introduction has just been exponential. Out of everything that we've seen kind of land in our industry within the realm of fintech, are any of them that really stand out to you, particularly in the last, say, 18 months?
Yeah, I'll say there's two categories that really stand out. And the first one I'll call credit card for service. So anybody trying to do planning or consulting that's not necessarily tied to a financial product or sale, that was tough. You had to do a check, and if it was some sort of recurring agreement, it might have been difficult to collect or remind clients of those checks. So setting it up for automated credit card for service has been huge. With our advisors, in 2020, we saw a 3.5 increase in revenue for planning consulting agreements, along with 4 times the number of transactions, and then twice as number of the advisors were using planning and consulting. And in 2021, that's even we're thinking it's gonna double again. So credit card for service has been big. The other one, marketing platforms. So it used to be, you just see like a generic industry, like a MailChimp, a Constant Contact, sorry for the name drop, but just a generic platform. And it really didn't help solve an advisor's problems. So what I think we're seeing now is a lot of niche players that are saying, I think there's a bigger problem to solve than just how do you send an email, right? They're looking at how do you get the right content? How do you position yourself? How do you do that email in a smart way? And how do we kind of package it all together and help you? And I think there's been some really interesting innovation happening in the fintech marketing space.
Super, thank you. So I'm actually going to ask this next question of all 3 of you gentlemen, because I really think it begs to be heard out and hear a response from all 3 of you. I'm going to start with you, Alex. Tech is great, quote unquote, and more of it, as you just pointed out, Alan, keeps arriving on the scene, but it all comes with a price tag. How are firms, excuse me, don't mean to have misread that, how are firms handling or bearing this cost? Are they passing it on to advisors? If so, are they charging the full rate? Are they subsidizing them, et cetera? So it's kind of the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. More tech is better, but more tech costs more money. And we can do amazing things, but there's that trade-off. So Alex, you want to take a shot at that one first and share a little bit of how LifeMark handles that?
Sure. You're right. There's definitely no shortage of fintech out there. And yeah, they all come with a pretty hefty price tag. I feel like they keep getting more and more expensive as they get more robust, of course. I guess what we do first is we mitigate the cost by only contracting with software vendors that actually fill a need at LifeMark instead of adding to the services we can offer at LifeMark. So there always has to be a need that it's filling. We don't want to create something that wasn't there before. With that said, we try to accommodate the representatives by bundling all of this in a monthly subscription cost. So there is no upfront cost to registering with LifeMark. Rather, we charge you per month basis. It's a $275 charge each month. It covers all of our technology platforms. It doesn't matter if you use it or you don't. Again, it includes everything, even E&O. So we try to bundle everything. That cost hasn't changed in decades. We try to only utilize those platforms that we absolutely need, that fill a need at LifeMark, to avoid too much cost to us.
Very good. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate that. Mitch, you're on deck. How does Larson deal with it?
So going off of that, the analogy that I often compare this experience with is like picking your favorite airline. So do a little bit of name dropping here. You got Delta versus Southwest. I'm up here in the Twin Cities here. So Delta has a pretty big position. And as you may or may not know, with Delta, you have to pay for your own baggage, whereas Southwest, you get that first one free. And so it all comes down to the experience to the end user. What's going to be the least offensive? Is it going to go with the mindset of you could have an a la carte offering and use or pay for what you use? Or do you try to bundle it for the best experience possible, like Southwest? Now, I would tend to say that Southwest tends to have a better experience because they give you a little bit more with it. And so for us at Larson, what we've tried to do is we've tried to do exactly what Alex has highlighted, which is identify the core operational needs of each of these advisors and try to create an experience that is going to help them be successful, and honestly also help us at the broker dealer to be successful as well. So there's some give and take there where it's mutually beneficial. And then out of that come up with the pricing. In those areas where it falls outside of the core offering, we try to do the negotiation so that those other advisors that want to opt for those other services, even though they may not be included with the costs that we pass on to them, either through the haircut or the technology service fee, that we try to give them the best deal possible by utilizing our scale to negotiate on that.
Super. I was actually going to ask that question. You beat me to it. Geoff, how do we do things at Valmark?
We're a little bit of a more hybrid approach. A lot of our advisors are fiercely independent. So when it comes to things like cybersecurity, we're probably going to be a little bit more prescriptive and say, this is the platform we want you to use. But we tend to have a lot more a la carte offerings. So for example, if you have something innovative you want to do with marketing, as long as it meets our cybersecurity and WSPs, we're probably going to allow it, and then it's offered a la carte. I mean, we do have some enterprise agreements where it makes sense, where a large number of advisors are using something, and we want to get some scale and pricing, but we tend to be a little bit more flexible in terms of our fintech offerings.
Okay. Got a great question that just came in here, and Geoff, if you're still got your whistle wet, I'm going to ask you to actually continue on and cover this one here. It's a little bit off of the kind of the core of what we've been discussing, which has been tech, as our focus on the platform has been thus far focused on tech. What about policy and procedures relative to a platform?
Yeah, so all the tech is great in the world, but you gotta know how to use it, right? So one of the things I think, especially in the last year, we've seen a big change is what I call asynchronous communication, right? So we talked about these cloud-based communication platforms. People are working from everywhere. They might have been shifting their hours. So I think there's kind of this big focus now on things like, recording videos, having an online knowledge base, learning management systems, putting kind of those pieces of the puzzle in place. In fact, we had a big initiative this quarter where we've made just a ton of videos to update our learning management system. So when a new assistant or advisor comes onto the platform, it's easier to learn how to use all these tools and to be able to do it over time instead of a big cram session. just piggyback off that, the other area we're seeing a lot of just focus is, hopefully we get to touch on a little bit later, is cyber, and just making sure that our policies are really good and can help protect advisors and their clients from all the increase we see around, cyber, money movement, wire fraud, that sort of thing.
Super. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see here. Oh, okay. I'm going to sort through a couple of them here. I was wondering if we were going to get this one, then sure enough, the audience didn't disappoint. In the midst of COVID, our industry got hit by something just as onerous called Reg BI. Okay. With that said, is there a technical solution that you're utilizing? And Alex, I'm going to have you handle this. Are you utilizing any kind of particular solution to deal with Reg BI compliance? Are you guys just using spreadsheets like somebody alluded to earlier?
Sure. So focusing exclusively on technology solutions, I mean, there was a lot of research and a lot of policies that were implemented to address Reg BI. But again, focusing on technology, we decided to use our CRM, which is also our data aggregation tool, to document all conversations with clients, substantiating recommendations, or again, scalability of your business. Like you said, we want to make it more valuable for succession planning. It also helps in that respect as well. So our advisors are required to record all their customer correspondence or conversations in our CRM, which is then reported to their supervisor and reviewed on an ongoing basis. So we hope that that does cover the Reg BI requirement for substantiating recommendations.
To just hop on that, if I could,
Yes,
you highlighted something that's sort of a pet peeve for me within the industry, which is our utilization of spreadsheets, and they're a wonderful tool in terms of doing scattered work. One of the things that I've consulted with people over my career, and I've tried to make it gospel around here at Larson, is that if there's any sort of ongoing process or program that we need to be mindful of, it shouldn't be driven by a spreadsheet. It needs to be centralized in a database. So exactly what Alex said in terms of identifying where is that platform going to be to fulfill the needs of something like Reg BI or any sort of books of records needs, really needs to be centralized within a database structure so that you can quickly find it and access it when the regulators come knocking at the door. Because the last thing you want to be doing is trying to hunt down a particular spreadsheet. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but it doesn't take much for someone to inadvertently fat finger a spreadsheet and lose a significant segment of data with one fell swoop.
I think we've all done that inadvertently. Undo instead of save. It's amazing how.
I'm a big fan of document recovery these days with all the various online cloud tools.
Absolutely. Geoff, you must have struck a chord because one of our audience members wants to hear from you. Geoff, what was it you wanted to share about cybersecurity?
Oh, just I think you guys had a session earlier, but I just have a couple points I like to talk about. And the first one's MFA Everywhere. So if you're on a platform and it has MFA, make sure you use it. And if the platform doesn't offer MFA, maybe look for another platform. The other thing that's come up recently that may be not as intuitive to people. So, your MFA, it usually sends a text to your phone or something like that. A lot of these systems will allow you to set up multiple authenticators. So you could have like a backup phone. And some advisors may think it's a good idea to have their assistant have their phone as the backup authenticator. And that's not such a great idea if you're ever thinking of doing that, just because if a bad guy gets your password and the assistant inadvertently approves that, you could be in big trouble. Kind of the other area I've seen in regards to cyber is making sure we're educating our end financial clients. As part of an institution, we think a lot about protecting our advisors, but in some of the incidents we've seen, a lot of these bad actors, they'll originate with the end financial client because maybe they're not as sophisticated. They may not have MFA at their home, Gmail account or something like that. So I think as an institution, telling our advisors to also educate their clients about, kind of the dangers of cyber and their money and how to, protect them, I think is really important. I don't think that's something that at this level we talk enough about.
Well, Joffrey, you just hit something I think is very important, which is the idea, I think back to the early days where I was supporting an advisor at a practice, and everybody knew everything about this advisor, and quite often he could any of us could act on his behalf. Now, we were given the permission to do that, but as technology has changed and we now have unique licenses and software is scaled along with it, it's very important that people operate within the licenses and permissions that they've been given, so that you have clarity on who is actually doing what within the office and the tasks. So as much as advisors from days gone by may have been accustomed to empowering their assistants to do anything and everything for them, there needs to be clear structure around what the advisor is allowed to do versus the support staff for each of those advisors as well.
Super. So gentlemen, I've got one closing question that I'm going to ask everybody, and you've got to answer it with one word. What is the most important consideration when implementing a successful fintech stack? Alex, I'll hit you up first.
One word, people.
Geoff?
Oh man. Mitchell next. Mitchell next. Come back
All
to me. I'm still thinking. I'm a slow guy.
I'll go with the word adoption, like people, but adoption.
I'll say agreements.
I want to once again thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to share with us today.